I was sitting there watching people trip over this oriental rug outside of the boardroom. And I was like, guys, why aren't you moving the rug? And they were like, Sherry, we'd have to go ask the CEO. And I was like, whoa, we don't just have a technology issue here. We have a culture issue.
We wrote rug because we kept seeing the same thing everywhere in organizations, in leadership teams, even in our own lives. People keep stepping around problems instead of identify them or naming them. And then they normalize what hurts or what's outdated or what's broken until it becomes, part of the floor.
This is Associations Thrive, the podcast celebrating successful associations and their leaders. I'm your host, Joanna Pineda, CEO and Chief Troublemaker at Matrix Group International. Listen in as top association executives tell all, revealing the creative and innovative ways they're increasing membership, generating revenue, nurturing engagement, and reimagining their organizations. By the way, if you've launched a new initiative, created new member services, or updated your governance structure and are seeing great results, I want to hear your story, and so do my listeners. I'd love to have you as a guest. Go to podcast.matrixgroup.net and apply to be on Associations Thrive. Now let's dive into this week's show. Today is a special episode. I'm speaking with Sherry Budziak, founder and CEO, and Kevin Ordonez, president and managing director, both of OrgSource. Sherry and Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Thanks, Joanna. Thanks for having us. So excited for this today.
This week is a special week because you've published your third book, Rug, How to Move What You're Tripping Over and Lead with Heart. Sherry, tell us about this book and why rug? It's a very special metaphor. Now, I've read the book, so I know what it's about, but I want you to tell my listeners.
So back many years ago, Kevin and I went to an organization that we were asked to come in and help them with their digital transformation. So we did what any consultant would do. We're sitting in a boardroom, we're asking the questions. We're asking them why they have 100 spreadsheets, literally asking them to count the spreadsheets. They had like 50 staff and 100 spreadsheets. But I was sitting there watching people trip over this oriental rug outside of the boardroom. And I was like, guys, why aren't you moving the rug? And they were like, Sherry, we'd have to go ask the CEO. And I was like, whoa, we don't just have a technology issue here. We have a culture issue, right? They were afraid to actually move the rug. So I sat there watching them for 2 days trip over the rug. No one would move the rug. So I literally got up, rolled up the rug, put it in the storage closet. And what happened? Nothing. Nobody noticed. The CEO cared less.
Oh, they all noticed, but they were grateful and they didn't want to mention anything.
Yeah. They didn't want the rug back. So as we were writing the book, the rug just became the story of what are those things that we're tripping over every day that's right in front of us that we all see, but nobody wants to do anything about. In their case, they were worried about the new CEO getting upset. I was like, the new CEO probably has never even paid any attention to that rug. But these are a lot of different things and obstacles that either we don't want to talk about or we just don't want to do anything about. So that's how the rug came about.
Sherry and Kevin, I love this rug metaphor because there's so many ways that you can think about the rug. You can trip over it. It hides things. It gets in the way of things. It maybe is preventing you from getting to certain places. I love this. And so my question to you is why a book?
We wrote rug because we kept seeing the same thing everywhere in organizations, in leadership teams, even in our own lives. People keep stepping around problems instead of identify them or naming them. And then they normalize what hurts or what's outdated or what's broken until it becomes, part of the floor. So People ignore things. For me personally, when life pulls the rug out from you, there are certain things you can't ignore anymore. And transformation is never just operational. I think it's emotional, it's human, and no one was really talking about that in some of these digital transformations. But it's more than just technology. And I think we wrote this book so we can share this with others. And you don't have to have a title with a leadership title. It's really for anyone who's leading any type of project or team.
So let's come back to the book title. It's How to Move What You're Tripping Over and Lead with Heart. So talk to us about H.E.A.R.T.
So we looked at really the past 20 years of consulting and even prior to that, like what can help people move forward? So as you know, Joanna, working especially, a lot of our business at .orgSource is around digital transformation. That's probably 70% of the work that we do. And Kevin and I kind of sat back and reflected on what can we give somebody as a framework to help them move and help them kind of reimagine their current environment, of course, around tech stack and those types of things. And I was born on Valentine's Day. So we came up with H.E.A.R.T. And the first stands for Humanize. In the era of AI, we always talk about the human. And also through a lot of the projects that we've done, I always said, you guys have to think about the human behind the data, the human behind the screens. So that's how Humanize came about. And then empower. How do we empower our teams? How do we share ownership? How do we build those cultures where people have permission to lead? And that was really important to us. Ascend. So now getting over those fears, like 50% of your staff has a fear of AI. And what does this mean? And what if I type secret information into the AI and that fear? So how do we grow and ascend from where we are, where that fear is holding us back? And then R was for reimagine. So how can we reimagine this challenge? How can we take a challenge and make something positive out of it? That's one of the things that I've worked on personally for myself over the last couple of years is instead of focusing on the problem, like how can we reimagine this, that this is, an opportunity, right? And then transform. And how do you pull this all together to make the next best version of your organization or even yourself? So that's how the H.E.A.R.T. framework or methodology or whatever you want to call it came about. We really do think it's a way to lead an organization to kind of that next best version.
Well, I love this because it's a very accessible framework, if you think about it, right? Because people understand the metaphor of the rug, and now you've given them a framework for doing something about it. But give me some examples of how people are identifying the rug and what are they doing about it?
Some of the examples the rug can represent could be, oh, that's how we've always done it. Or we have to have X, Y, and Z sign off. Or there's all these committees for reviewing a new program or something like that. So those are some examples of what the rug may represent. Sometimes it might be, what do we keep tripping over? Is it tripping over our leadership doesn't want anything to do with IT or keep their arms distance from IT when you really need IT at the table when you're talking about your strategy and new programs and processes. Sometimes it could be member-centric. We talk about member experiences, but designing around our own internal conveniences, right? That could be a rug. You can't automate member experience that you haven't actually designed. Sometimes rugs can represent burnout, staff doing all this heroic manual work behind the scenes, or people filling gaps instead of fixing the problem. When we go into organizations, we hear about a lot of symptoms. Membership flat, event registrations are down, product sales are down, but no one wants to really identify what the real problems are or name their rugs.
So give me an example of this. Say we've got an organization that's really mired, right? They got a lot of rugs. It's just a lot of bureaucracy and they can't seem to get something done. How would you recommend that they apply the H.E.A.R.T. framework to get rid of the rug, I guess, or move it aside or stick it in a closet?
Yeah. That's why in the book is really kind of a toolkit. So for each one of these areas, there's questions. There's questions to work through with your teams. And we have some things in there that we call micro moves. I'll give you one example of an organization that we were working with on a project. It was kind of this web application, pretty intense project. And it was kind of more of a logic decision tree product, let's just call it, to simplify it. And the staff just would not make any decisions. And Kevin and I were like working with them, like, well, what about this or moving this? They wouldn't make a decision because, again, they felt like they needed approval from their leadership, the senior staff. So we literally had to have a conversation with the senior staff. I mean, that was the rug. We're like, this project's never going to move along unless we identify what the problem is. And the senior staff said, well, we can't be in those meetings because we're too busy doing this over here. And I said, well, then the staff's not making decisions on this project over here. So it was a simple move. We literally had them come into the room and say, it's okay if you make a mistake. Like, this is technology. We can change it. We can fix it if you do make a mistake, but it's okay. And so once we moved that rug, then the project just moved on. And there was really just a couple people on that project. They never went back and had to ask senior staff about anything, and they had a successful project. So sometimes it's those little things. And I'll just add, this book to me, it's become so fun because, like, rug, of course, wasn't the name that we were going to name this, like move the cheese or fish or something like that. But everybody kept resonating with the rug. And when we talked about the rug story that I started talking about at the beginning of this conversation, people were like, Sherry, that's our rug.
Ah.
So now, instead of saying that's our problem, when you say that's our rug, now it's easy. It's like this safe, like, oh, it's just a rug, not a big deal. We can move it. And so a lot of times in our consulting engagements now, someone will lean over and be like, Kevin, Sherry, that's our rug. And we're like, oh, thanks. Okay, now we can really figure out how to fix this, what's getting in the way, because we've identified the rug. Because a lot of times those rugs are simple things, but nobody wants to say them out loud. But now it gives language to something to make it fun and not negative. And now we just talk about moving the rugs.
The thing that I have found, though, in my work with associations is that it takes courage to name the rug. And it takes courage to decide to do something about the rug. So who should be reading this book? And who should be acting on it?
When we wrote the book, we wrote it so people can take something away from the book on a personal level, as well as with teams and people leading teams, of course. But what has happened over the last couple of weeks, we have gotten calls from CEOs saying, hey, can we pre-order your book for our next board meeting? Because we have rugs that we need to identify.
Ah.
That's really exciting because I was like, ooh, our intention wasn't we're writing this for boards, but it was funny. You were at our last meeting and I gave the presentation about moving the rugs. And when I said, what's the rug? A lot of people were responding that it's their board. So again, it's giving kind of this safe discussion about like the board's holding us back in this era of AI and everything else that we've got going on and the speed of change, we're not being able to react. And so let's give our board the book so then we can start talking about the rug at that level and then have it trickle down. So it can go both ways, but the intent was around those leadership teams and leading teams in a proactive way to be able to grow and transform, but it's turning into something more than we originally intended. So it's exciting.
That's super exciting. I'm also getting the idea that maybe whole teams should read the book together, not just the board, but like an entire staff. I can see like buying this for my whole staff and then having a conversation about the rugs in the organization. And you have very thoughtfully included discussion questions at the end of each chapter that make it really easy to have these discussions. So kudos to you. I mean, I was like, hey, this is really easy to have a book club about this.
Yeah. I mean, there's been times where Kevin and I have come out of an engagement where there's big projects and we're like, oh, they're never going to be able to move forward because they've got these issues that are underlining. And I'm sure you worked with clients that way as well. So kind of back to the why, it was one of these, things that we were very passionate about how do we give people a tool that can help them work on these things that are just getting in the way. And to your point, being able to work with your team or, again, giving them language that seems more safe.
Even for high-performing teams and those organizations have put their teams to those high-performing teams exercises or high-trust team exercises, it's especially for those teams of people because they're probably tired of powering through everything and they want a better way to lead without losing themselves. So those questions at the end of all the chapters will help those high-performing teams perform even better.
Hey, so I want to turn to something a little bit different. You talked about how you've been doing digital transformation for the past 20 years. It's 2026. What are some big trends that you're seeing that associations should pay attention to? And maybe there's some rugs that need to get put aside along the way.
Right now, what we're seeing a lot of is the question of where do we start and how do we automate some of our tasks, especially when everyone is overexposed to AI. And it means a lot of different things, a lot of different people out there. But as they start looking or researching or experimenting with tools, questions that come back to us is, well, where do we start and how do we automate tasks? Or we get the response, my job, I can't automate any of my tasks. Well,
that's a rug.
Right. Everyone's rugs are out there. And I think just starting by identifying or naming those rugs out there will help. I think it's the way of looking at it from a different lens and a different approach instead of sitting in there and saying, oh, what's your ideal state? Or what are we trying to accomplish? Or how does this align with your strategic goals? Right? All great questions, but some staff won't be able to give the right answers or think about it because they get stuck on the whole, what am I supposed to automate? Or how is AI going to help me do my job if it's supposed to take the manual tasks out from underneath me? And I think they start getting stuck right there. They couldn't give us a list of, here are the 15 tasks that we would like to see some AI tool help automate for us. So we're hearing that a lot, is that's where people are getting stuck. And those are their rugs. Where do we start? What are those tasks to automate? I think sometimes they're maybe hesitant because of job security or because they don't think anyone else or anything else could replace or help them. So it's a total different mind shift of what we're doing today is going to be very different than what we all do tomorrow. Because if you think about what AI and the promise of AI is, any task you do that requires someone to be manning a keyboard or a mouse, those tasks will probably be replaced by AI. And I think that's a hard question for people to get their heads around. And some people don't believe it, but it's here.
There's an interesting thread that I'm hearing here, which is there's lots of rugs, but sometimes you can't move the rug until you have leadership involved. And so if AI is a big challenge in 2026, a lot of leaders, you know some of them, I know some of them, who say that's a technology thing. And so then you never make progress on the rug. So what's your advice there? Like some leaders will say, I never use AI, or, that's part of my tech strategy.
Yeah.
But we know that this is bigger than that.
Yeah, we're having a lot of those conversations, Joanna. As Kevin was talking in the question that you asked about trends, I'm having conversations with people saying our membership is down, our event revenue is down. The only reason that looks like we're profitable is because of our investments, but we've been running in the negative for years. But a lot of these leaders mentally are held back saying it's a technology problem. I'm still hearing that. And I've said for 30 years, IT needs to be at the table. IT can help enable an operations, can help. They're thinking of things in a different way. They are thinking about the data and how staff's entering data and where that's maybe holding back an organization. And they are looking to the future. But now more than ever, I think leaders, whether you're the CEO, COO, whatever, CXO, need to understand, I hate to even say technology because AI is going to be like the internet. Like everybody's using the internet. Everyone was using Google, right? And it's moving quicker and faster. And that's why we wrote the book, to have a playbook so people can rethink and reimagine their organizations today, because I really believe that we are going to have to rethink how we work. To add to that, I'm surprised by the lack of training and education. We're in 2026. Us here, like we've been living, breathing it.
Right.
Like when ChatGPT came out, we're in, whatever, we're learning new features every day. But there's a lot of folks where they don't even have access to the tools in their organization. So we are getting, as an industry, way behind very quickly. And that's a big rug. The rug's getting bigger and bigger every day.
And then it's going to be harder to move.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff underneath those rugs.
Sherry and Kevin, where do I buy the book and how do people turn this into action?
Well, you can buy it on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble.
We'll put a link in the show notes.
So it's really anywhere that you buy your books, but those are, I think, the two most popular places.
You also have a mastermind class. So tell us about that. That sounds like a way to really turn the lessons from the book into action.
Yes. We actually have a mastermind group and then another group called AI Accelerator. So the mastermind group I'm running, and it's really to help leaders move forward and grow and support each other. That group just got started. We will be adding some more people over the next couple of weeks. So if anybody's interested to learn more, they can let me know. And then Kevin is starting what we're calling an AI Accelerator that kind of runs similarly to a mastermind, where other associations are going to be sharing information about what they're doing in the area of AI. But he's also going to do a show and tell and some weekly education. Since we stay on top of that regularly, we thought we would share that with the association community. So
fantastic. We'll put a link in the show notes. Before we go, I'm going to ask you guys a personal question. Are there rugs that you're moving, replacing, sticking in the closet that you care to share with us?
Well, I would say, Joanna, I'm living and breathing this rug. And so now that I'm out talking, I'm on podcasts, and I've written the book, I've got to watch to make sure that everyone around me is saying, okay, Sherry, that's your rug, right? From my staff the other day and from my coaches, they're like, Sherry, not everything has to be perfect. Like I have this rug of perfection that, ooh, that isn't right. Ooh, there's one more typo in the book. We need to get it back to the publisher. Like nobody caught this. So that's going to be my 2026 goal, is to try to calm and say 97% is okay instead of 100. I don't know.
Excellence is okay, not perfection.
Ooh, okay. Thank you. I'm going to use that. That's perfect. That'll be my goal for 26.
I'm personally moving the rug of feeling like I always have to be the steady one. For the longest time, being dependable, not showing that uneasiness or uncertainty, or not slowing down, or not asking for help. That rug initially looks like a strength, but I think quietly it may be disconnecting me from support that I really need, and maybe even more shared ownership. So I think that's something I need to work on for 2026.
Although, Joanna, if that happens, then I'm going to have a different rug, because Kevin's always the steady one. As Sherry's going here or there, like, let's do this, let's do that. He's like,
It sounds like he's going to continue to be steady and reliable, but maybe he'll ask for a little bit of help.
Yeah.
The other rug is doing it all by yourself.
Thank you for sharing. I'm going to think about this. I'm going to get copies for my staff. Thank you for writing the book and for really inspiring this conversation. And it sounds like it's a conversation that needs to happen in companies, with ourselves, and in families.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much. We'll check in with you maybe in a few months, and you can tell us about how many more rugs you've moved.
Love it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Joanna. You're the best.
Thanks for listening to Associations Thrive. We're so glad to have you here. My personal mission and the mission of my company, Matrix Group International, is to help associations and nonprofits increase membership, generate revenue, and thrive in the digital space. I want to hear stories of how your organization is thriving in today's challenging landscape. Please apply to be on my show by going to podcast.matrixgroup.net. By the way, do you need help with a digital initiative? Maybe it's a website redesign, a new membership database, or a hybrid meeting that you're planning. I'd love to connect with you. Please visit the Matrix Group website at matrixgroup.net. Thanks again for listening to this week's episode of Associations Thrive. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, leave a 5-star rating, post a comment, and share it with your colleagues and friends.